Hey there, it's Marianne from Thrive Admin Services. This video is a little bit different. Today what I'm showing you is how I've taken an existing workflow planner board using Microsoft Planner, and I've looked at it, I've tried to rework it to suit some changes in the way I approach my work and discovered that it just wasn't going to work for me anymore. It didn't suit the way my brain was working and it felt too cluttered. And I've decided to just recreate a board, taking the good things from that board and creating a cleaner, easier workflow for me. So this one is about a little bit about working with Planner and how I've created some of the labels and checklists, but it's also about stepping up and admitting that sometimes the systems you create don't grow with you the way you hoped, and it's okay to sit down, rework them, and create something else. I will say that this entire process to recreate this board has taken me a couple of hours, but prior to that, I sat down and did some physical drawing and mapping and list writing on paper to jot down all of the processes that I follow now and how those have changed from what my original board was. I tried really hard to rework my original board, but it just felt like I was complicating it further because I could see what had been there before. So it's not a failure of a board if it no longer suits your needs, and it's not a failure on your part either. So this is my explanation on how I've accepted that sometimes you just have to start all over. Let's have a look. Okay, so I had a planner that worked along a very similar format, and you'll be able to see a video in the channel on YouTube that explains how I've set that up. But I wanted to show you what I've decided to do to help me work smarter. Now, I work in a very reasonably structured way when I work with clients or when I work on a project, but the problem I was having was that it was getting complicated for me to manage and maintain it, and I was actually overcomplicating it for myself. So what I've done is originally my plan was to tweak the original board that I had, and it had lots of completed tasks and things in it that were done in an old format, and it had all of the tags and labels set up, and I tried working with it and playing around with it, and it became too complicated. So what I've done is I've created this new board, and I wanted to show you that the process sometimes changes because of the way you think about your work. So previously my board, I think it's this one. Nope, it'll be this. Nope. Oh goodness me, I have so many. It used to be this one here. So what I had was an admin board, and you can see here I had things like a discovery call, no-go. This is where I was starting to work on the new stuff. These are the old ones that I had: name, discovery call, and I put all this information in, and I had some checklist items. And then I would have onboarding was broken into 2 steps, the actual content work I did, and then offboarding was broken into another. And these were my templates, and I would copy them across and then fill in. And you can see I've got completed tasks at all different levels, but it's not consistent. In theory, there should be a lot more in the discovery stage or potentially the onboard stage than get to project and offboard, because there'll be discovery and onboard stage that don't progress to project. Likewise, I've done more than 20 projects, and I just wasn't keeping across it, particularly when you look at the fact that this setup had me creating for every single client that came in. From start to finish, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I had to create 7 different tasks for a client. So I was really overcomplicating it for myself. So what I've done is I've created this new one. I'm going to get rid of that so you can see. So the first thing I've done is I've streamlined my process so I can see it on one screen. And for me, that's much easier because wherever I'm working, because I work with 2 screens, if I'm on the other screen, I can instinctively now have an Outlook open and information from emails can be popped in, or I can be doing the steps on one screen and then ticking them off on the other. So I've streamlined the way it works for me so that I'm not getting overwhelmed by having to move across screens and scroll, okay? That's just the way my brain works. So it's one window. Then what I've done is I've created my admin board, and I've broken this into the same stages here. So I've broken into 4 stages, and these are my 4 stages. Discovery, which has 3 different options. Everybody will get an inquiry, and that's anyone who submits an inquiry to me as an email, as a discovery call, as a Thrive chat, as a message on social media, I will use this and I will copy it. So I will copy the task and I would then put the name of the person here. So we could call this Joe Blogs, and it's going to stay here. And then I'm going to move that to discovery, and we copy everything across. If I close this, you can see this is now my Joe Blogs inquiry. So what I would do is I would pop the individual name. So typically up the top there would be the name of the organization. We put the phone number in, the ABN in, their email address, and then I might say this is going to be a VIP day, and at the moment I haven't sent the proposal, so I can't pop that in. And then what I've done is I've created all of these things to a key milestone. So whenever an inquiry comes in, every inquiry should get a subfolder in my Outlook leads folder, a subfolder in my OneDrive leads folder, because that's where I put everything. I create an item in my list. So I have a list that I run as well, because I put more information in there. Has the discovery call been booked or a proposal requested? Have we done one? Now I can delete any of these that are not relevant to this particular client. So I might say, right, they're not going to get a discovery call, and we'll change this to, and we'll just get rid of that one. Yes, I've done this. Yes, I've done this. Yes, I've done this. I now make a go, no go decision. And up here, I'm going to make it inquiry go. Assigned to myself, marked as completed, done and dusted. Excellent. And then what I'm going to do, the proposal might be sent today. I'll make this due anytime today. Proposal sent 16 May 2023. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to close that. It's now sitting here. So the next stage after an inquiry is I've got go and I've got no go. So what I've done is if someone is not proceeding, if I've decided, then I've got some really simple stuff. I want to do a thank you email and I want to archive their folders. And I can set a date. So I go, right, it's definitely not done. I want to have that all finished by a certain date. But likewise, I might copy this one. And this is now going to be Joe Blogs, and it's going to go into discovery still, and we'll copy that. Okay, so I'm going to copy, because I copied all of that, we're going to paste that there. I'm going to assign it to myself. We're going to make it as in progress. And my goal is to have all of this done by, let's be realistic, within a week. So as I'm working through scope of work as a comment, I will attach draft and send the proposal. I will do in Outlook and in Word, and then I will add the proposal as an attachment from my computer. I'll put an Outlook and reminder, a reminder in Outlook. I will update the list, and if it's a go, we then move to a second list, and I can actually, from my lead tracker one, I copy that across into the new one. And then I need to create the new planner task for service agreement, and that's completed, and then I would sign it off. So for now, I'm going to say I've done this one and this one, and pop those there. And you can see this is going to sit here showing me that I've got a week to finish this. When it's completed, I can either just tick it all off here, or I can mark it and update it, and it will sit here. So what I've created is I've broken this down. I've set all of these tasks up so that what shows on the card is the checklist. Because again, then I don't have to click in all the time. I can just work through the checklist. If I want to put notes or comments in, I can, but I can just do this from a front page view. So I've got the inquiry stage, which has me setting everything up and booking in that first call. I've got a lead process, which is where we would create some of the back end pieces for me to be able to send a proposal and get that out to the client for them to accept or decline. If it's not going ahead, I send a thank you email, which I have a template for, and I will archive the lead folders, and then it's closed. The next stages, I've created 3 onboarding processes. So there's the service agreement, which is a process in itself, and that has, I need to draft and send it, the client signs it, I sign it, it gets saved to the folder, and then I raise and send the deposit invoice with the service agreement. So that all happens kind of at the same time. And the milestone here is that the deposit is paid or the client declines. That's the end of this process. Once that's happened, and that one would sit in this onboard and will accrue at the bottom, and then I've got my workflow set up. So this is where I'm doing my processes to be ready to work with the client. Creating their SharePoint site, creating a OneDrive library, creating the teams and channels, creating the planner board. I move that lead content that we created up here in this one, where we created, up the very top, sorry, where we created these subfolders. These now get transposed down here, and I will move the lead folders into project folders. I would invite the client to the team. I would attach a link to the client portal to this task so I can access it directly from here, and then I send the welcome email, and that's onboarding complete. If it's a returning client, so that would be for a new client because I need to create everything. If it's a returning client, then we will add a shortcut back to the existing site. I'll update the library, update the teams, update their planner board, move the content across, that's the fine, make sure that that client still has access or if anyone else, and send their welcome email. And then I've got one work in progress or project onboarding one. So the WIP will be that I've received their logins, I do a version 1 that gets created, reviewed, and I get the feedback. Then I do a version 2, which follows that process as well, and then I do a final. And the milestone there is that the client approves the project. So I can set a time frame and keep setting my due dates on that based on where I'm at in that task. And then lastly, once the client has approved, this is my handover and my final work. So it's a handover tutorial, a handover summary, and the handover email that goes out to the client with their final invoice. Then from my end, it's removing all of their logins, hiding the team in my teams, unlinking the SharePoint library, and archiving their project folder. And then the milestone for that the whole thing is finished, is that the client has paid the invoice, and that's project finished. So for me, I've simplified this down so I've gone to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tasks here, where before we had, if we go back into this one, we had, well, if we forget, those were edited. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We had 8 tasks here as these were actually, we probably had a couple, I think I tinkered with these ones as well. So we probably had about 10. But what happened here was that I didn't have these in an order that made sense to me. The processes that were built into those are quite different. And the way my business works in terms of the projects that were being worked on in this workflow when I created it were no longer relevant. So there is nothing wrong, if I get rid of that one, there's nothing wrong with deciding that a workflow that you have that has data in it and has been useful is no longer relevant now. It's not a failure of the system, and it's not a failure of you. What it is a sign that you now think about things slightly differently. You might be dealing with different workflows. You might have different communication styles because of the different people you're working with, either internally or externally. And so your systems have to develop and change. Because I already knew and I had mapped out on paper what those setups and steps were, doing this was much easier. So I would recommend mapping out all of your steps. If you don't have a workflow planner or a scheduler or a process in place, that's your first step. But I wanted to show you that I'm willing to change things up and test and try some new things. So I'll be launching this one into my business this week, and hopefully this will help me keep across things and actually get through things in a systematic process. So now I just have to actually fill it in. So there you have it, a new look or a refreshed look on a planner board to help me manage my projects. Now, I don't expect you to just take that and create it yourself. The way you work is different too. But what I want you to do is have a look at the way you think about your workflow and check whether the systems that you're using in any program, but whether they are still relevant and useful and you're actually using them. So that original planner board that I hadn't been using properly, and I've been using intermittently. And I've set this new one up in a way that means that the way my brain works and the way that I'm processing things at my desk now will be much easier for me to keep that up to date. So if you have any questions about this board, the content in it, or you're interested in finding out more about how I work with Planner and the other Microsoft 365 tools, then please get in touch. You'll find me hanging out on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Thrive Admin Services. And you can check the notes on this video for details of some amazing ways that I can help you to work smarter with Microsoft 365 in your own business. Have a great day.